few who don't. Mark Powers is president and founder of Atticus. He's been coaching attorneys on practice management and marketing for 25 years and is a master certified coach. He's co-author of Time Management for Attorneys, How Good Attorneys Become Great Marketers, and a new book recently released, Hire Slow, Fire Fast. Mark is one of the top legal coaches in the United States, a national speaker, and has a regular column in Lawyers Weekly. He's the developer of the first personalized training program dedicated to teaching attorneys lasting skills and habits required for effective practice development and facilitates the Atticus Practice Builder. And Sean McNallis is one of the founders of Atticus, and she's coached attorneys for more than 20 years. She's also responsible for training the practice advisors and the development of the Atticus curriculum. She's co-authored the 3 law firm books with Mark, and she's columnist for Lawyers USA and a professional speaker. Mark and Sean are co-authors of the book, Time Management for Attorneys, A Lawyer's Guide to Decreasing Stress, Eliminating Interruptions, and Getting Home on Time. You'll find more information about the book on our website. That's atticusonline.com. So Mark and Sean, I'll go ahead and turn the call over to you.
Very good. So, thank you, Susan, and welcome everyone.
You, Susan.
Susan, do you want to tell people how they can ask questions on these webinars?
Yes. To ask a question on your control panel, if you hit the button to raise your hand, that'll let us know that you have a question for us, and Mark can unmute your line so that you can ask it. And again, there's a question box also on your control panel. So if you type in your question, that we will also be able to see your questions in that way as well.
Good. Thank you, Susan. And so welcome again, everyone. And so this is one of the first calls of the new year. And we tend to like to start the new year in working on marketing and time management, because those are going to be the 2 biggest frustrations we have as we begin the year. And what we want to do today is try to get us taking a couple of actions in the first quarters, a couple of cleanups, things that we can do to make our life a lot less stressful and easier. These calls are usually, on these calls are Atticus graduates, so you've been to Practice Builders, or you've been to one of our programs, or you've worked with a coach, and also friends of Atticus. These are people that are either part of our strategic alliances, or they've heard about Atticus, or they're a friend of somebody that's a client of ours. And so these calls are very, we try to make them as interactive as possible. So you want to keep a pencil and paper handy, and jot down as many, we'll ask you questions from time to time, jot those down, and any action items that you see that might be helpful for you as we move through the first quarter in 2014. So one of the things that happens for a lot of successful attorneys is that as the firm grows, as they take on newer or more responsibilities, they start to outgrow their current time management abilities. They sort of hit what some people have called a ceiling of complexity, that the skills that they have are only, they're good, but they're not good enough to take them to the next level. The other thing that happens is some of us are fairly good time managers normally, but when we get too busy, we stop practicing the good time management habits, the time management habits. And this is especially true if you consider yourself a good time manager, because we fall off the wagon, and we know that we're good time managers, and it can't happen to us. So what happens is time management breakdowns sort of sneak up on us. And you'll start to notice things like the desk gets messier than usual. We're working longer hours, or coming in on the weekends, or we're experiencing a little bit more stress than we have in the past. The other thing that happens is we start to, or probably better phrase, we stop practicing some of our healthy habits like exercise. We start to see we don't have enough time for exercise, or doing those things that keep the rest of our life in balance, spending time on our relationships, working on our personal finances, those sort of things. And when we stop working on those healthy habits, they'll start to have breakdowns in your personal life, and it'll affect just time management in general in the rest of your life. Or you notice that you used to be very good at hitting deadlines, but we're not hitting them quite as well, or that we're experiencing more interruptions than we've had in the past. So this stuff sort of sneaks up on us. Sean, anything you want to say about this?
You as well. I mean, that's how high the level of dissatisfaction is in the legal profession. And a lot of it is fundamentally lack of time management skills and not putting in the kind of boundaries that will protect you from the perfect storm of stress that working in a law office is. So I put this in just hoping that all of you will listen to this like your life depends upon it, because it does. You won't have a life unless you learn to manage your time, learn to set boundaries, and learn to create, and it's such a cliche, but learn to create balance in your life. You really won't have a life if you let the work that's piled up on your desk overcome you. So my hope is that you'll listen to all of this and really apply these lessons, because they can make a huge difference for you.
Sean, I just want to check on something. Michael Murphy has his hand raised. Michael, is there something that you wanted to say? Your hand was up as in you had a question. Okay. If you do, Mike, you can just type it into the questions. I see that your hand's raised. You can just type it into the questions and we can see if we can address it. Okay, so here's what we're going to talk about today. We want to get you focused on your highest and best use of time. And most people on this call will probably be shareholders or principals in the law firm, but there are probably some associates and paralegal and clerical team on here as well. And we'll try to talk about that as it applies to you. So we want to review some of the fundamentals. As we fall off the wagon of time management, we got to go back and look at the fundamentals. And we want to come away with this call with some basic actions that can get you a strong start in 2014. And so when I look at the shareholder in a law firm, often we talk about what's the highest and best use of their time. And I would say these three things are the highest and best use of your time as a shareholder. Doing complex production that nobody else can do. So it can't be delegated. You haven't hired the expertise to do it. No one else could do this but you. And we like to limit this as much as we can. As you grow in your practice, we want you to do less and less and be able to hire competent people that we can delegate some of the complex production to. The second highest and best use of your time is developing talent and systems. So that's working with your team to make sure that they can meet your standards. What you'll find is you're less likely to delegate to people if they won't meet your standards. And I'm sure this is true for many of us on this call. So what we have to do is we can hire people that have the talent and the ability and the competencies to start to meet our standards. And then we can train them, mentor them, develop them. But if you don't carve out some time and understand this as a priority, that won't happen. And the other thing is systems. We want to make sure that there are processes in place that we don't have to duplicate effort every time we do something. We've got a process for it, we repeat that process, and we work on those systems. And then the third highest use of your time from Atticus's perspective, when we look at the shareholder, is marketing. This model for a successful law firm says that we can never, ever, ever stop the marketing activity. So we have to have time blocked out and we have to have a focus on marketing. And so you may be doing a lot of other things, but these are the things that we want you to put focus on. Sean, do you want to say anything else about this, or if I was a paralegal or a clerical team, how do I look at my highest and best use around that?
If you're a paralegal, for example, the highest and best use of your time is going to be doing whatever whatever production the attorney or the associate cannot do. Doing that production is usually the highest and best use of your time. And in many cases, you get pulled into administrative tasks and management type tasks. And in some cases, it may be in your office, it's a small office, and there's not a lot of other people that can do it. It's not the best use of your time. I do realize sometimes it's a workaround approach in many small firms, but truly the best use of your time for a paralegal is production. And then for a clerical person, it would really be taking all of the non-substantive tasks off the paralegal, off the associate, off of the partner, absorbing all of that kind of work to free up the associate, the paralegal, and the partner to be able to do the more complex production.
Well, that brings us to a good conversation about division of functions. Any one of you that's ever done the Practice Builder or have been in one of the coaching programs, you may have seen a form inside of Atticus called the division of functions. And what we usually do, we take a form that's similar to this. This is a basic view of it. The ones that we would use in coaching would be a little bit more detailed, a little bit more spread out with the functions. But we're looking at what functions that you're doing and what percentage of time, and we can talk about how this matters. So Sean, do you want to talk about this and walk us through an exercise on this?
Yeah, let's look at the top 3 or 4 functions: marketing, management development, meeting with clients, hearings, and trials. These are generally activities that should be done by the partner level attorney in the firm. There will be a little overlap here. You might have an associate that also does some marketing. You might have an associate that does some meetings with clients and covers hearings. But typically this higher level activity is something that is taken on by the partner. And marketing, you see, we have very high on the list. And that's because if new business doesn't continue coming into the firm, it really doesn't matter what the rest of the team is doing because the firm won't survive. That's why we put marketing in such a high level position. But everything underneath that is more substantive and is certainly the territory of the partner. Now the next category down is the chunk that is typically the realm of the associate, who can in many cases attend hearings, who may be second chair at a trial, who may be doing depositions, who might be doing high-level research. These are the tasks normally associated with an attorney who is an associate.
Hey, Sean, can I jump
Yes.
in a minute? So I want to let everyone know that's on the call. While Sean is doing this, in the background, what I'd like you to do is write out what percentage of time you're spending on each of these tasks. You can do, if you want to, you can copy them down on a piece of paper as we're talking and put a checkbox in the ones that you do, like you may be doing a certain number of these, and what percentage of time are you spending doing marketing, management development, meeting with clients, those sort of things, all the way down to filing or answering phones. I'm sorry, Sean, I wanted to give everyone some background perspective.
Sure, and I will say, notice as you're sort of doing your version of this form, how far down on the list of tasks you may be going. You know, to have real high levels of leverage and profitability in a law firm, you want to make sure that everybody is working in the cluster of types of tasks that is associated with their job description and pushing down the lower level work to the paralegal, the secretarial, the clerical, the administrative people. The idea is to free up the attorneys and the paralegals as much as possible to focus on the substantive activities. But what we so often find when we give this form to our clients is that even partners are doing document assembly work, even associates are doing copying and answering phones. So as you fill out this form, just notice if you're starting to do work or are doing work that is pretty low or much lower down in the hierarchy. That tells me, if I was your coach, that you're not really working up where your strengths are and where the best use of your time is. So Mark has just put up here the tasks associated with paralegal and clerical. Now, we know if you're in a small firm, in a small office, you may have to wear many, many hats. But if you are looking to hire someone, use a form like this to figure out what the best use of your time is and the best use of everyone in the office. And then if they are doing lower level tasks, hire the lower level person to take some of those lower level tasks off the higher level people, only so that you can free them up to do the production that they are meant to be doing.
So
this
can
is what we call re-engineering your firm and really getting everyone working at the level that they should be.
Yeah, Sean, can I speak to this for a second?
Please.
So usually when we're hiring someone, so if I'm hiring someone for you, I'm looking at somebody that can free you up to do your highest and best use, and someone that can either add value or can bill or profits to the firm. I want to make sure we're adding value or we're driving profits in the firm, and that can be a profit center. And what we see a lot of times is sometimes firms come to us and say, we need a new associate. When in truth, they have their associate doing a lot of paralegal work or clerical work, the current one. And what they needed to do is move some of that work down into a paralegal or clerical. And so what they needed was not a new associate, they needed a new paralegal or clerical. And often that happens with paralegal or legal secretaries, that you have high-functioning paralegals that are great billers, that are great at moving files through the system or adding value to the clients. And a lot of times we've got them bogged down in doing clerical work or bookkeeping work. And that's another one. Some of the operations and bookkeeping aren't on this list, but I really can't have my partners, as the firm develops, doing bookkeeping things, and some of the operations have to move down. So it's a good form for everyone in the organization to do, and then you look to see if you have to hire someone, and if you do, at what level. Anything else you want to say about this, Sean?
No, I think you've covered it.
Okay, so and if you have a note, we'll come to the end and we'll also take some questions then, so if you make a note around this. But this is a good tool to use on a number of different levels. The other thing, as we begin the year, is we like to get our priorities straight and our personal goals. And this becomes very, very important from a time management perspective, and it starts to lead into boundaries, and we'll speak more about that in a moment. But what gets lost in the practice of law is our fuel, the thing that gives us the energy and the juice to practice law. And if we let that go to the wayside and we forget about it too much, it just becomes a job that we have to come into to pay the mortgage, to make sure we're covering the overhead, those sort of things. And if, from Atticus's perspective, we don't get this part clear, working on time management and establishing boundaries becomes a secondary issue. So one of the exercises you might take from this, and I'll give you a way to approach it, which is kind of fun, is you might copy down these categories. And over this month, get your goals together for fun and adventure, health, finance, relationships, home. Some of you will have personal or spiritual goals, and even professional goals. I want to be the bar president, and you may have some other goals you want to put in there. And we'll come to establishing boundaries in a moment. But here's an interesting way to approach this, and this is the way we approach it in a lot of our workshops and coaching programs, is I would like for you to write this down. Write out your age 10 years from now. So on a piece of paper, write out your age 10 years from now. So If you're 45, write down the age 55. If you're 52, write down 62. If you're 62, write down 72. So once you've got your age down, I'd like you, if you have children, write down your children's ages 10 years from now. It's very important that you do the exercise with us. Have you got it? Good. Now, I want you to think about, I'm not going to have you do this here, but as an assignment, I would like you to do your goals over the next 10 years. And I want you to put into perspective where you're going to be 10 years from now. So sometimes we approach our goals and we say, well, I'd like to do this in the next 5 years, the next 10 years, those sort of things. But when you start to put it into how old I'm going to be and start looking back at what I want to have happen in that confined period of time when I am 62, 72, 45, whatever the age you're going to be, it makes these goals a little bit more real, and it puts them into perspective. So again, one of the exercises is complete your goals. I know some of you have done your goals, especially if you're working with Atticus. You may have done your goals last year or mid-year or something like that. Some of you are very good at doing it at the beginning of the year. If you haven't done them since the beginning of this year, redo them. And when I say redo them, I want you to write them out. There's real power in writing out your goals, as opposed to knowing or thinking you know what your goals are. And after you've done it, it's good to have your spouse do it and then compare notes. So we do a lot of work around this in our programs, but I would, for now, take this as your first quarter objective, but in this case, have this done by the end of this month. So I want to talk a little bit about establishing boundaries, which is one of the things that we find drives your productivity and your time management and your efficiency almost more than anything else. We all need coaching on the specifics, but the boundaries become fairly interesting. So if we look at if we took an average month and we looked at the days over the month, a lot of attorneys that Atticus encounters are working every day, and then they're working evenings. So they work these days, their evenings, and then they'll come in Saturdays and they'll come in Sundays. And what happens here is that they have no real boundaries around their personal life. And you've heard us talk about this before. And what starts to happen is this constant sense of work. There's always a deadline. There's always stress. There's always something to do. And there's no break. There's no time for recovery. But the other thing that's interesting here, as long as you have this wide open monthly calendar, what you're doing is you're disguising the inefficiencies, the unproductive behavior, and the incompetencies that go on in the organization. So when we talk and when we work with someone, we tend to block out a couple of days for starters. And you might want to set a goal in the first quarter on how many days off you will have in between now and the end of this quarter. And so, for example, you might have, if you were to claim all of your weekends in 1 month, that's 8 days. So over the course of 2 months, that's 16 days, and over the course of 3 months, that's 24 days. And then there may be some holidays and things that you want to take off. So it's a great goal to set, these are days that I will not be answering emails. I will not be addressing client or staff issues. These are my days. These are my days to recuperate. These are my days to spend with my family. These are days for joy, passion, centering, balance. And so once you're able to do these 2 weekends, then we want you to capture the other 2 weekends. And there's something that's fascinating when you do this. When our clients do this and they capture this for starters, what they've done is they've compressed into Monday through Friday, they've compressed the firm issues. And what it tends to do is rather than disguise inefficiencies or incompetencies or unproductive behavior, it forces them to the surface. And what it brings up is you'll start to notice And by the way, think of the weekends as an experiment. What worked, what didn't work when I blocked out the weekend? Were there things that broke down? What were they? What was the cause of it? And the cause of it will be something like either I don't have enough people, or I'm doing poor client selection. I'm taking in too many clients that are not paying the bills appropriately, and I can't afford help to cover that kind of client base, so I have to be more restrictive. Or I've made a bad decision with staff selection. And so I've got people on my team that are either incompetent or not qualified to meet the standard of care and work that I have and need in the firm. And so the thing that's going to make the biggest difference for you is making sure that we can surround you with a group of people that are on your team. When I say on your team, they're on your side. They're proactive. They'll make sure they protect you and work on the system. So you're also going to see where you're not being productive. There's a fascinating thing, and I'm trying to remember the name of the principle or the law, and it's basically that work will fill up whatever space we have available. So when you don't have these, this time blocked off, what will happen is on Friday the 12th, you'll be thinking, oh, I've got something to do, I've got to make a phone call, I've got to handle something, or there's one more piece of production to do. And you'll say, well, you know what, it's just too much today, I'm going to come in tomorrow and get it done. But if you didn't have tomorrow to do it, what you'll find is that you take action far better and you become far more productive than you've ever been in your life, because you put urgency in your decisions and you require more competencies from your team to get these things done. So once you've got these done, we've got these blocked out and it's working, what we want to do as shareholders is we need to carve out a little bit more time. And we want you to take a Friday. Now this happens, I'm not saying you have to do this, but with coaching clients, usually this is what we're doing. And what this does is compresses the week a little bit more, just a little bit at a time. And what's going to happen is we can see even more inefficiencies, we become more productive, and we make better decisions. Sean, anything you want to say about this?
I want to emphasize the principle that you talked about, that time will, or that work will expand to fill up the time that's available. And if you don't have recovery time, time for your hobbies, your passions, your interests, it will make you even more inefficient. They say that as you begin to get more anxious because you don't have a lot of recovery time, because you don't have a lot of free time to pursue the rest of your life, anxiety will slow down your decision-making process, and it will help you be more of a procrastinator. And if you do have recovery time, your skills as a decision maker.
Welcome to GoToWebinar, Webinars Made Easy.
Recovery time, just like athletes do. Athletes are very good about balancing the stress of performance with downtime for recovery. So keep that in mind. That's a really valuable function of your free time.
So, Christine, I saw your question.
Welcome to GoToWebinar, Webinars Made Easy.
Or push work off to others. We'll talk about that in a minute when we talk about the email. We're going to talk about some of the email overload you have. And I think it was, I just want to check, I think it was Gary. It was Gary that says that nature abhors a vacuum like work does as well. So I agree. So these are very important things to do. It might sound like a simple thing to do, but make this a goal. If you don't, no one is going to do it for you. So start carving out these as quarterly goals for yourself. And I know we're saying, well, what about the rest of the team? What about everyone else? Listen, if you do this first, you'll make the life on everyone else much better, because we get much more productive, we get better teammates around us, and we start to get systems. So I'm going to move on, Sean, because we have other tips to work through. The other thing that we do here that we're big fans of, just like you might have goals, you also have a life filled with tolerations, things that you're putting up with. And what you'll find is over time, you start putting up with more things. And that's why we call them toleration. So there are things in your firm, in your office, your personal life that are inconsistent with your vision for your life, for your future self, for that healthy person, for that person that's taking weekends, a person that's taking great care of their clients, that has a great team. So there are things that are inconsistent with it, and they suck energy from your life. And so I'm going to name a few categories where you'll have tolerations, and what you'll want to do is, on a piece of paper, start writing down a few. And we'll talk about how to deal with this in a moment. But here are some of the categories. So you have financial tolerations. So you have clients that aren't paying on time, or we've got personal financial issues. We're carrying too much debt. We're not paying attention to the financials. We have bookkeeper that's not getting us the financials in time, and we're putting up with it. We've got staff issues, staff that might not be coming in on time, dressing appropriately, or their attitude with clients is not what they're supposed to be, or their work product is not where it is, where it needs to be. So you have tolerations in that area. And you have clients that are C or D level clients, or in some of your cases F level clients, that are not appropriate for your practice. They either, because they're not paying their bills, they're poisonous to the rest of the team. You have tolerations around the office, home, auto. Think about the environment, like when we walk into the office, is there something in our lobby, the carpet, the look? Is it consistent with the vision? Is the landscaping as we walk into the office consistent with our vision of what we want the clients to see? Is it meeting your standards? And we have those things at home and auto. And these are very simple things, like you look into your garage and it's a mess and you say, oh, I'm going to get that one day. Or you look inside your car and it's filled with wrappers and you have a vision of how you will be neat and orderly, and you look in there and you see the wrappers, you say, I'll get those another day. Or you get into a rainstorm and you turn on your windshield wipers and they're not working effectively, or there's a bulb out. You have tons of tolerations. You have health tolerations. There's things happening in your body, or a lump or a bump or something, or glasses that are scratched or need to be replaced, and you're not doing anything about it. You're just putting up with it. We have people in our lives that are sucking or draining energy from us, and we're not doing anything about it. So what you want to do is start listing out as many tolerations, and in this call, see if you can list out, as I'm talking, at least 5 tolerations. Certainly there's piles of files that need to be worked on, or something in the kitchen needs to be done in your office, or there's something around technology that you're putting up with, office decor, staff issues. It's very helpful for this if you write a few down. Now, I'm going to say something about tolerations, and it's very valuable, so write this down as well. You have everything in life today. You have everything in life today that you're willing to tolerate. So if you have clients that aren't paying their bills, it's because we're willing to tolerate them. If our office or our desk is a mess, it's because we're willing to tolerate it. It's not great news to hear this, but we have everything in life that we're willing to tolerate. So hopefully you've got a little bit of a list, and what I'm going to ask you to do is take 3 of those tolerations. And there's a good way to approach this, by the way. You can either do it privately, or you can work with your team. One of the ways, fun things to do, is do a team lunch and go through a list of tolerations that you might have in the office, or frustrations. Have the team at lunch write them out. We might have a a flip chart, or we might have a whiteboard in wherever we're meeting, and come up with our top 10 tolerations. And then have the team vote on them, and vote on a certain number of them that we can eliminate by the end of this quarter. So you can either do it privately, because we certainly all have a lot of tolerations, or you can do this as a team and do a team cleanup. It's quite, you'll be amazed at how everyone really rallies around this, because we all have things that are bugging us. And so you have a lunch together, go through the list of tolerations, pick your top 10 and say, here are the ones, let's go for it. Let's play a game of eliminating them by the end of this quarter. Sean, anything you want to say about that?
No, I think you've covered it. I mean, these little tolerations just take energy from your life, and the more you can get through and deal with your tolerations, the more energized you will become. No longer will your environment remind you of all the things you're not doing. For example, if you were to attack tolerations in your environment. So I like your idea about having a lunch together, Mark, and getting the office together and actually tackling lots of tolerations.
Yeah, and you could even put a prize on it, $25 for every toleration eliminated, or $25 for the best toleration that we eliminate, or, you know, something, some prize on it. Make it a fun game. Take it in as a toleration project. Client selection. I know this sounds odd as a time management recommendation or a mini tune-up, but many of us, you know, when Sean and I look at a law firm, the two biggest mistakes that we see law firms making is in the area of client selection and staff selection. And these two issues create 80% of the problems that you're dealing with. 80% of the stress and frustrations that you're dealing with is because you let a client in the door that we shouldn't have let in, or you let a person on your team that we shouldn't have, and you kept them. So just around client selection, I want you to work on being more selective by saying no to more prospective clients. And how do we say no? Well, we raise our rates, we raise our retainer, we raise the value of the clients that we're dealing with, or the files we're dealing with, in a contingency practice. So you have to be able to say no to more prospective clients. Now, what this will immediately do, it should raise the average fee per file. So we're going to work with, and if we say no more often, we're going to have the similar number of files that we've had in the past, but the average value of a file will increase from 20 to 25% quite quickly. And that means we have more revenue in the door, and we're not going to be doing quite as much work, or we're going to be doing it for better clients. And this should free us up to make sure that we're doing a little bit more marketing. And we want to build a client intake matrix and use it. So what this is a scorecard. The client never sees it. A client intake matrix is a scorecard for identifying A, B, C, and D clients. And most of you could build one of these quickly. If you're working with a coach, ask your coach for a version of this. But it's just a scorecard so we can identify what's an A, B, C, and D. And you might even play a game around this with your staff that says, let's take, so listen, what we know is the bottom 20% of your files generates very few revenue, but it generates most of your headaches. And so if we say to the staff, let's look at our bottom files this year, from the last year, let's examine them and say, what standards do we need to put in place, and who do we need to, with compassion and with integrity, let go of? Who do we need to move out of our system? There's nothing as powerful, I know this sounds crass, but there's nothing as powerful as you and your team letting someone go and firing a client. It really reminds you that this is my practice, and we'll build it on our standards, and we can't work with everyone. All of this has a profound effect on your time management for the rest of this year if you start working on this. So another thing that's very important to do, we've talked about time templates and sort of structuring your day. Not everybody can do that. Sean, do you want to talk a little bit about the Power Hour?
The Power Hour is basically where you set aside, usually in the morning, especially if you don't have to, you're not someone that has to go to court often in the morning. It can be done in the afternoon, but you go behind closed doors, and it's very important to close your doors. You want to turn your phones over to your clerical person, your paralegal, whoever it is that is your who can take the phones for you, and also set phone appointments for your clients so that you can call them back after you come out of production. You give yourself an hour or two. Before you go behind closed doors, you set out all the highest priority production that you need to do, put that out on your desk, and then you power through it. And you're able to access what we call the zone, because theoretically you're operating in a pretty interruption-free environment. And when you start doing the same thing, and this is the essence of time blocking, when you start doing the same kinds of things as opposed to task switching back and forth rapidly, when you are doing the kind of priority that you've decided is the best use of your time, you actually become 4 times more efficient because you're not being bombarded by interruptions. So we recommend this as your island of sanity and production during the middle of the morning. Some of our clients do 1 power hour in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. They use it for the highest priority production, and they leave that day feeling like they've not only got a lot done, but the most important things done. They didn't allow the C&D projects to pull their attention and their focus all day long. They actually attended to the A and B level projects.
Good. John, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about email management.
Okay.
So, you know, I'm going to give you the short, John, I'll talk a little bit about the 4 Ds, then maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the other items. So,
okay.
you know, this is a thing that we encounter so much in law offices, the frustration and the overwhelm that comes with emails. And it's a skill, like managing emails is a skill like anything else. And once you get the skill down, what happens, I know this is hard to believe, but emails become a friend because you're getting your highest priority stuff and you're seeing opportunities. When I look into my email box, what I see usually is how to make more money. I'm seeing a request for some issue, I'm seeing production, or I'm seeing a client inquiry or questions that lead to client inquiry. So I try to manage it that way. And one of the things you might do is write down the 4 Ds, because every time you come across either a piece of paper or an email, you have to make a decision. And you're going to make a decision to either do it, delegate it, delay it, or delete it. And so what usually happens is, for me, I come in the morning and I'll block out 20 minutes to work on my emails first. So it's a time that's dedicated to my email. And what I do is I first go through and I delete anything that's not relevant, that's crap, that just doesn't belong there. And I also try to make sure that if it's something I don't want to see again, I put it on my junk mail and that it's deferred there all the time. And then I'm looking for things that can be delegated. This doesn't belong to me and I need to move it to somebody else. So sometimes I'm responding to the client, or I'm responding to the person, or I'm forwarding it, and I'll let them know directly what's going to happen. So person B is going to talk to them about this, and they're on top of it, and I'll copy person B. So I'm delegating. Or I decide that this is something that is going to fit into one of my production hours or my production periods, and I'll move it out into a do it later file. So I keep an action file, so it's a file I go into on a daily basis, or I might even move it into a client file. And these are all production files, things I'll work on during production time, but I don't want them cluttering up my email. And the last thing is do it. And what I will recommend is to do something that will take under a minute to respond to. If you can respond to it in 30 seconds to a minute, go ahead and do it. Take care of it. Get it out of your email box. If not, put it into a production time. Sean, do you want to talk about some of these others?
Yeah, perhaps the most important one on here is to turn off your alarm. If you have a little alert, alarm, a ghosted message, anything that comes up on your screen or that you can hear telling you that another email has arrived, it can be a huge distraction, especially if you're trying to do the production time, the power hour like I was just describing. One of the reasons we like email so much is that, like text messaging, we get a little hit of dopamine in our brain, the reward center of our brain, when an email comes in, and it piques our curiosity to know what it is. So it's very alluring, and it pulls us away from the task at hand to see what is, see what's happening with email. So that can be a source of constant interruptions. And what we're after is to keep you, to have some periods in your day where you're really isolated from interruptions. So we recommend that you have designated times to read your email. For sure, do it first thing in the morning. I don't know anybody that can resist that. Get the first block of emails read, then go into production time. Maybe check it again after your production time. But don't be constantly checking it piecemeal when every new email arrives. Cut the source of email where possible. In this case, we're really interested in you eliminating especially the nuisance emails that you may be getting. Don't voluntarily sign up for things that you know are going to flood your inbox with email. You've got enough legitimate email to deal with. You can handle some of it by routing it to folders that you can look at later if it's something that you think you will be interested in. You can create folders for projects and people. Highlight the action items in the body of the email. If you're receiving an email that is complex, covers more than one subject at a time, sometimes it helps to highlight the actions in the body of an email. Try to train yourself to give shorter responses. In some cases, I know people that use the subject line of email almost like text messages, and they send back and forth, just short text almost in the subject line, and they communicate like that on very small issues that don't need a lot of explanation. You can also train your team inside the firm to rank in the subject line the importance of the email. It can be an A, meaning very urgent, important, a B, meaning, look at this when you have a chance, a C, meaning, we're just copying you on this for information. So if you can train your internal team to do that, that can help you make judgment calls on what you really need to pay attention to.
Good. Thanks, Sean. And the thing that Sean and I would just reinforce here is that this is something you have to practice, and you have to start to use these as protocols and train the rest of your team that these are protocols. And once you do that, you're going to start to see the number and volume of emails drop, because you're also pushing things into your junk mail, cutting them from getting to you. And what will start to show up is the important ones and the things that you have to deal with. So Sean, I'm going to ask if we can, because I want to make sure we get to the daily focuser. Can we just do sort of like a couple of quick things on managing external interruptions than internal interruptions?
Okay. External interruptions. I don't need to tell most of you that you are the target for a tremendous number of interruptions during the day. And client selection is going to help. Setting client expectations is going to help sort of tamp down some of the questions that come to you externally. But your team is also a great source of interruptions. Now, they want to do a good job, and they're trying to be responsive to clients, and you have trained them that it's okay to interrupt you. If you really want to experience some uninterrupted time to do production, so you don't have to use your weekends to do production, train your team members to, number one, be critical thinkers, and number two, to batch the questions that they have. So how do you train your team to be to be better critical thinkers. Have them come to you not only with questions, but with solutions, and present the solutions to you, and then you buy off on or improve on what they've suggested. This teaches them to be better thinkers, and hopefully has them start thinking more critically so that they don't have to interrupt you quite as much. But it's an ongoing training process, and you can use these opportunities as teaching opportunities to see if they're applying what they're learning as you're discussing in these question and answer periods, to really learn more and interrupt you less. But in many cases, you haven't trained your team as well as you need to, and so they only have part of the picture. So use opportunities, every opportunity that you can think of, including lunch and learns and just-in-time training when you're delegating to people, to add more training, add more context, explain more to the team members so that you complete the usually incomplete training that they have. Now let's talk about internal interruptions. Studies are showing that for most of us, our ability to focus has really become very diminished. There's a lot of reasons for this, but mostly we've become internal interrupters. In other words, we don't, our ability to attend to one thing for very long has really become diminished. Anxiety and stress will impact this. But it's also our belief that we can multitask. There is no such thing as multitasking. I know all of you know this. It's really rapid task switching or task toggling, with you going back and forth between the two things that you're trying to do or 3 or 4 things that you're trying to do. And it's a myth that you can do all of these things simultaneously and well. In fact, we lose about 10 IQ points when we try to attend to too many things at once. So multitasking not only doesn't work, but it diminishes the amount of intelligence you're using when you're trying to deal with too many things at once. So we say focus on one thing as much as possible, work it to take it as far as you can to a stopping place, then switch to the next thing. There's an art to this, and it takes a lot to sort of manage those internal and external interruptions to be able to recover your attention span.
Yeah, so you'll notice with, especially if you're family law, criminal law, personal injury, most of litigation practices, we are very good self-interrupters, and we actually create distractions. And what happens is that we have a high tolerance for chaos. So if any of you have done your behavioral profiles, your DISC, you'll notice that you have a high tolerance for chaos and risk. And so you'll get bored sitting at your desk, and you'll say, well, I need to go out into the office and get a cup of coffee or file something. And you'll see something, get distracted, and distract everybody else. And what we're doing is creating mischief sometimes just to get some excitement. So we have to be careful of that. Sean, I'm going to take us right to the Daily Focuser, because this is a good tool to close on. So this is a tool that we use with a lot of our clients, and it was actually brought to it is really sourced out of a book called The Checklist Manifesto. And if you want to take a look at that book, it's written by a doctor who noticed the problems in operating rooms and the number of problems. And he started to use checklists, and he studied checklists, and he went into it. And one of our clients, Richard West, some of you may know, created his own checklist, and he uses one every day. I use one every day, and a number of our clients do. And if you think about it, it's just a checklist for how I go through the day. And so you might have different things on your checklist. This is just a draft, but it's a good thing to do. So the first thing he does is handle emails and check messages. And he also re-records. In this case, he does a daily message. He re-records it. He meets with his secretary or key assistant to delegate. Great thing to do first thing. And then he makes a list. What are the 3 most important actions that I could do today? So if I got these 3 things done, I'd feel very productive, and it was a great day. And he lists those 3 things out. And the fascinating thing is it's so easy to get distracted and get pulled off of your tasks. This brings them back to it. And then he says, if I got those 3 things done, what would be my next 3 actions? Now, quite frankly, some of our clients, when they finish the first 3, they say they're done and they leave for the day. But some people will list, okay, if I got those done, what's the next? And from a marketing perspective, they say, and this is just a very good habit to learn, is learning how inside of your comfort zone, asking for a referral. And did I do one today? And that alone could drive up a lot of business. And then at the end of the day, he prints out his checklist so that it's there, and it's the only piece of paper on his desk when he comes in the morning. So you clear off the desk so it's clean, and there's one piece of paper when I come back. So it's a great tool. You can do this on a Word. We have samples, especially any of you that are working with a coach, make sure you ask them for a daily focuser. It can be a very powerful tool. I haven't seen any questions come up on our question and answer, and which works out well because we're at the end of the session. If you have a question on time management, I highly recommend the time management book. It's very, very good. And also you could email either your coach or you could email Sean or I or Susan with one of your questions. And I'll give you Susan's email. It's susan@atticusonline.com. And just as a reminder, those of you that know somebody, I like to say that friends don't let friends practice without Atticus. The Atticus Practice Builder is May 2nd and 3rd. Really, really powerful transformational program for people jumping from building a job to building a business. And then the Dominate Your Market program, which is the most advanced program we're doing right now, is March 6th and 7th. And you can email Susan or you can email Denise at Atticus Online about any of those. So this whole intention is to give you a mini makeover on time management. We hope that this is helpful for you and makes a difference with your practice and makes a difference in this first quarter so you can have a powerful 2014. With that, Sean and I are going to thank you, and we're going to go ahead and close for this session. Okay. Bye,
Thanks
everyone.
so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Mark.